good. They're actually really, really bad. Democracy is on the chopping block. I mean, the signs of democracy being on the chopping block in Georgia have been already firmly visible when the whole foreign agent bill the mess went down. People protested, people were brutalized on the street, and the bill was passed either way, even though no citizens wanted it, you know? And there's this the Dream Party is, of course, the parties that's right now in charge. Well, it shouldn't, it possibly should not be in charge anymore, but we'll get to that. Yes, that's the foreign agent law. The foreign agent that all organizations that receive any sort of funding must register as foreign agents, and that comes with certain negatives, let's just say. And that is why people protested, because it sort of mirrored a similar thing that's present in Russia, and it mirrored a certain thing that Orban tried to implement within Hungary, but the European Union sort of forced him to back off from that. That's basically, um, yeah, that's basically how that went down. So already back then, there was a huge, huge worry, uh, sort of thing. People were hoping that the damage done by the foreign agent law could be undone once the parliamentary election would be done and the Dream Party would be pushed out of power, that the opposition would win, and that because the whole thing about the foreign agent bill and other moves that the Dream Party has been doing, even though technically speaking, the Dream Party sort of officially said it was pro joining the European Union, but actually, through its actions, it led to the to the process of joining the European Union to be basically frozen in place, even though not long ago they've been awarded the title of candidate to join the European Union. So they were on the right path to join the European Union, but then the party started doing shenanigans that started sort of messing with democracy. The foreign agent bill was one of those initiatives, and moving the country de facto closer to Russia, which triggered a reaction from the European Union, which was basically, oh, this foreign agent bill, that's basically a deal breaker for us. We might just put on hold your candidacy. If that's kind if that's how it's gonna be, then we have no choice but to sort of um, think again about this whole thing. And that leads us to the parliamentary election that just happened. And we're going to be discussing a little bit what happened before that. And then I guess we're going to be talking about the results. And then we're going to be talking about the aftermath, I guess. The aftermath of the parliamentary election. Yeah, I'm going to be covering the US election like I have to. It's a pretty important election. It's an election that will um that's an election that's gonna decide a lot of things, right? It's an election that's just gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be super uber important. It is super uber important, especially for Ukraine. So we're gonna take a look at this first thing, because there were already signs of very bad things happening during the voting itself. So we're gonna be starting from the top. Georgia's pro-Russian party wins according to partial vote count amid exit poll confusion. There's a lot of but no, I think we can look at something else first. We're gonna be looking at something else first. Yeah, Poland had a lot of restrictions put on it when it first joined, especially on what it could export. It was like a thing. All right, so we're gonna be taking a look at this. We're gonna be making some commentary to it. Yeah, but in time it sort of works out. So joining the EU ends up being a basic, overall a beneficial thing. Also, there was a thing in Georgia during the election time, during the voting time, where journalists from abroad would try to enter the country in order to cover the election, cover the voting process, but they would be stopped at the airport and then just turned away to some other nearby country. They'd be not let into the country. Journalists would be turned away, not allowed to cover it, which is, in itself, it's like, that is its own interesting thing, isn't it? Journalists not being able to properly cover the voting process of a parliamentary election. It gives you pause, let me just say. It gives you pause. Let's start from the beginning. Georgian president slams exploitation of ethnic minority in alleged ballot stuffing, because this is one of those situations in which the president stands in the opposition sort of to the government, to the majority leading party. That sort of almost became the case with Poland, but now we have sort of like an opposite situation. We have the ruling party that is in charge, and we have a president in Poland that sort of is of the currently opposition party. So it's like the, I don't know, opposite of what we have in Georgia. Georgian President Salome Zourabichvili has condemned the alleged use of ethnic minorities to manipulate elections after a video surfaced showing a man dropping multiple ballots in a city largely populated by ethnic Azeris. You know, a guy would just hop in and there should be like a video here. The vote pits the ruling Georgian Dream Party. The vote pits the ruling Georgian Dream Party in power since 2012 against four main blocs representing the pro-Western opposition. The incident mentioned by Zourabichvili reported took place in Marneuli, a southern Georgian city predominantly inhabited by Azeris. Very immoral to use an ethnic minority to rig the elections, Zourabichvili wrote on X, sharing a video that shows a man dropping a handful of ballots into a ballot box, and I'm just gonna show you the thing. It's gonna show you it right now. Do I have it? Yeah, I have it here. Yeah, that's it. This is basically what happened. Let me show you. The person that was in charge of the process of this poor person that was just doing his duty of being like this, you know, one of the people that looked over the ballots. So that is it. Very immoral use of ethnic minorities. Voting at the polling station was subsequently halted, reported Georgia's private news agency, the Interpress News. The Central Election Commission said that the Ministry of Internal Affairs has initiated an investigation into the matter. So we could just sort of see that there was tampering, there was ballot stuffing, there was voter intimidation. There had been reported instances of violence against voters. So there's been all sorts of things that were designed to make one of the parties a more the party that would more win with more certainty. I'm just gonna put it like that. And according to media reports, the polling station in Marnueli did not employ electronic vote counting. For the first time this year, 90% of votes cast in Georgian parliamentary elections will be counted electronically. At the close of the election, devices will print preliminary voting results. Votes will also be counted manually, and the final results will be based on these manual counts. As of noon GMT 0800, the voter turnout stood at 22%. Polling stations will remain open until. So this article has been just during the process, during the voting process, still during the election process. I'm talking about it, even though the whole thing is over, I'm talking about it to sort of build this timeline of abnormal things being reported, stuffing, violence, these sort of things, these sort of irregularities, let's just put it like that, during the election itself. Reports of violence, there we go. Observers have also reported additional incidents and violations at polling stations, including instances of physical violence, so voter intimidation. Commenting on such reports, Zorabishvili said, violence is occurring at various locations. Journalists' equipment has been broken, so not allowing journalists to report on the voting, because if journalists could make enough of a stink about irregularities in the voting process, then that would be sort of more difficult to pull off, right? Groups have gathered to escalate the situation. The president urged the Interior Ministry to ensure that police respond more swiftly and effectively, adding that such tensions at polling stations cannot be allowed. She also said that she was unable to get in touch with the Interior Minister, which basically means that the president urged to get things under control, and the ruling party ignored it largely, which already gives us some kind of information about the possible motivations of the groups involved. Crackdown on foreign journalists. On Saturday, Swiss photojournalist Stefan Goss, who had arrived to cover the parliamentary elections, was denied entrance on arrival at the Tbilisi airport and subsequently deported to Dubai. Following the incident, Goss, who is accredited by the International Federation of Journalists, wrote on X, on arrival, my passport had clearly been flagged. They took it. I waited for 1.5 hours and then got paperwork saying I was denied entry and was being deported. So not even allowed entry into the country, based on the fact that this person wanted to cover the voting process. There you go. That's the tweet in question by Stefan Goss. Earlier this week, Georgian authorities also denied entry to Czech journalist Ray Baselay, who, after 34 hours of illegal detention at Tbilisi airport, flew to Warsaw on Thursday. So that's a thing. That is a thing. As you can see. So this is basically the voting process. As we can see, we already have a lot of red flags, a lot of warning signs that this election might be a little bit off. The video that we've seen of ballot stuffing, the intimidating of voters and journalists, and finally, not allowing certain journalists from abroad entry into the country itself. Right? I guess that at least partially paints us a picture of what was going on in Georgia. Right? Now we move on. Because the results sort of indicated, depending on the information you got the polling results from, one set of information said that the opposition parties won, and one set of information declared the Dream Party to be the winners, the exit polls, the polls with that before it was even finished. And it is worth noting that two leaders of two countries at that point have already congratulated the Dream Party their victory. And those leaders were Vladimir Putin of Russia and Viktor Orban from Hungary. They were fast to congratulate the Dream Party their victory, even though technically speaking the account was still not finished. Georgia's ruling Georgian Dream Party won 53% of the vote in a parliamentary election on Saturday, with 70% of precincts counted, the Central Electoral Commission said. We're gonna show this on the screen. Final turnout in the election was 58% for 94, the commission said. 58.94%. However, there was some uncertainty as the opposition also claimed victory based on exit polls conducted at the behest of pro-opposition media outlets after polling closed at 8 p.m. So we have the situation in which one exit poll says this, the other says that. Both parties declared victory. But Putin and Orban also congratulated one of the groups that have declared victory, the Georgian Dream. While an exit poll by the Georgian Dream supporting Imedi TV channel showed the ruling party winning 56%, exit polls by the pro-opposition Formula and Mtavari Arki channels showed major gains for pro-Western opposition parties, who they suggested would together be able to form a majority in the 150-seat parliament. Bidzina Ivanishvili, the ruling party's reclusive billionaire founder and one-time prime minister, claimed victory and praised the Georgian people. We have a quote to read. It is a rare cause in the world that the same party achieves such success in such a difficult situation. This is a good indicator of the talent of the Georgian people, Ivanishvili said just minutes after polls closed. And also, the Georgian Dream Party is actually very close, very sort of eager to accept the loss of the territories annexed by Russia in the war. The opposition also claimed victory and said it was on course to win a majority. European Georgia is winning with 52% despite attempts to rig elections and without votes from the diaspora, President Salome Zorabichvili said on X. See, there we go. That's the tweet in question, which you can see why this whole thing is a mess. You can see why democracy in Georgia is in serious peril. I saw this video on Twitter where a person was like, "Oh yeah, I saw certain bad things happening during the voting, but it all went smooth." Well, it doesn't really go smooth if you end up with two parties declaring victory. That's not really an indication of smoothness in my book. Georgia has shown democracy, Europeanity, and maturity. I am proud and confident in our European future, she added. I've never seen the word Europeanity before used in any capacity. The Formula exit poll said that the ruling party would be the single largest party, but that the four main opposition parties combined would have 83 seats. Georgia's four main opposition blocs are deeply divided, and it is unclear if they will be able to work together if they deprive Georgian dream of its majority. If the pro-Russian Georgian dream manages to hold on to power, the country may once again fail to reassert its sovereignty and will become hostage to Russia's design to revive its empire, which, unfortunately, the way things are going, they are going in exactly that dire direction. And unfortunately, things are not going well for Georgia, which has been a trajectory that we've been observing ever since the Foreign Agents Bill. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has frequently aligned himself with the Kremlin, congratulated Georgian Dream on its overwhelming victory. You see, I've mentioned this before, but now we're reading it here. Orban Viktor, congratulations to Prime Minister PM Kobakidze and the Georgian Dream Party on their overwhelming victory at the parliamentary elections today. Parliamentary. Okay, I'm gonna read this again. Congratulations to Prime Minister Kobakidze and the Georgian Dream Party on their overwhelming victory at the parliamentary elections today. The people of Georgia know what is best for their country and made their voice heard today. And what is best about this tweet is that it's been contest checked. At the time this post was written, the CEC of Georgia did not publish any data on election results. Huh. Salome Zurabishvili, president of Georgia, announced a 52% for the pro-EU, and exit polls agree with President Zurabishvili. Only GD seems to believe in its own victory. Interesting, huh? And of course, we go back to the reports of violence and irregularities when it came to the election itself. The voter intimidation, the ballot stuffing, the limiting access of journalists, which limiting access of journalists to events and things already is a pretty dire indicator that democracy is not in best shape. The election was marred by reports of several incidents and violations at polling stations, including instances of physical violence. Dozens of alleged Georgian Dream government-paid thugs stormed the central office of the opposition United National Movement, attacking members of the group, reported independent Georgian news website Civil.g. The website described the attackers as hooligans of the Georgian Dream, as the men arrived in cars with large GM flags hanging from the windows. One of UAM's representatives was severely injured and remains hospitalized, it added. There were also reports of voting irregularities, with Georgian presidents condemning the alleged use of ethnic minorities to manipulate elections after a video surfaced showing a man dropping multiple ballots in the southern city of Marnueli, which we've watched the video. which is largely populated by ethnic Azeris. So we're sort of starting to repeat ourselves, but I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that we are repeating um, relevant information here. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing per se. Okay. So let's to continue. We have two steps. We have steps of the election itself, the election day, the tampering, the intimidation of journalists, not allowing them entry. We have staffing. You have all these things. And then we have the results, which sort of go both ways. The Georgian dream as well as the opposition declaring victory. Now let's see where this story goes. And now, sort of, kind of, yeah. Georgia has a pretty complicated history when it comes to its politics, let's just say. We can get into the history. We can do the history of Georgia tomorrow. I can promise you that. I can promise you a segment on the history of. Because now we're getting to the next bit. We're getting to um, the observers, the electoral observers. So are the voter fraud accusations unjustified? No, they're not. They're not. The elections were absolutely rigged in the favor of the ruling Georgian Dream Party, which wants to get closer to Russia. Absolutely, yeah. Those accusations are absolutely justified, yeah. Which is the entire thing, which is the entire problem of democracy and Georgia being in peril. Because Georgia is part of Russia's imperial building ambitions. Georgia's parliamentary elections conducted on an uneven playing field, observers say. This article is from what day? 27th. Georgia's parliamentary election was conducted on a vastly uneven playing field, with the ruling party holding a significant financial advantage over the opposition, international observers said on Sunday, adding that this has undermined the election's outcome. So not only you did have the intimidation, stuffing, limiting the ability of journalists to report on this election, but also you had the ruling party that put itself on a big financial advantage. Georgia's ruling Georgian Dream Party received over 54% of the vote in Saturday's election, the Central Election Commission said on Sunday, though the results have been disputed by the country's pro-EU opposition parties. And rightfully so, because we've discussed the many irregularities that have been reported on this election, including uh, the observers. The opposition has accused the election commission of failing a dirty order from Georgian Dream's leader Bidzina Ivanishvili. A dirty order. International observers said that the financial imbalance between the ruling and opposition parties weakened trust in both the fairness and outcome of the elections, which does not matter considering that everything seems to indicate that the Dream's goal is to get closer to Russia and basically get into its sphere of influence. Like that is a thing that has been building up to that conclusion. Uh, Julian Bulay, Lulian Bulay, the head of the delegation of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, PACE, said the uneven playing fields and the deficiencies we just noted in the election process undermine the trust, its outcome, and its fairness. This explains the reaction of the election result to the election result. He added, the presence of cameras of the ruling party in the polling stations and people in front of polling stations tracking and possibly controlling voters led to a widespread climate of pressure and party organized intimidation and the feeling of Big Brother is watching you. So, in addition to all the things that we've mentioned before, we also have this. It seems like the number of voter abuses keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing without any indication of stopping. The amount of things that went wrong with this particular election just does not want to stop expanding. Bulai also said that the PACE delegation observed cases of vote buying. I told you the list keeps expanding. It just keeps expanding. It does not want to stop. It will not stop. And double voting before and during elections, especially in the rural areas. Pascal Alizard, Special Coordinator of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, added, reports of pressure on voters, particularly on public sector employees, remain widespread in the campaign. This, coupled with extensive tracking on voters on election day, raise concerns about the ability of some voters to cast their vote without fear of retribution. If you select who you're voting for while thinking, if I vote for this party, will I face consequences? That's already not a fair election, okay? That's already not a free election at that point. If you're thinking, well, I better vote for this party, right? Unless I want to be in trouble. That's already not a fair election. It's already not an election that is free, I would say. Europe must stand with Georgians, says Polish Foreign Minister. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said on Sunday that Georgia's parliamentary election results differ from exit polls, indicating that the electoral process may not have been fully democratic. Well, that's an understatement of the year, it seems. He said, we expect reports from international observers, but it seems that the result differs from the exit polls, and it seems that the elections were not fully democratic. Let international observers speak, but I'm very concerned about this situation because these elections were perhaps a key day of choice as to Georgia's orientation, which it was. It actually was. It was the choice between being oriented towards the European Union or being oriented towards Russia. It's just that much is clear. Thank you, Greater End. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. He added that 4 opposition groups have already denounced the official results as unfair, with Georgian President Salome Zorabichvili claiming that the opposition has won. The opposition has won. Those elections were not fair. Zurabishvili rejected the official results on Sunday, alleging total falsification amid what she described as unprecedented Russian interference aimed at undermining Georgia's democratic process, which, you know. Following Zorabishvili's announcement, Sikorski wrote on X, "The president of Georgia has announced that the parliamentary elections were falsified. Europe must now stand with the Georgian people." So there must be some interference, is what's being said. There must be some investigation must be done through the international community. Neither free nor fair. Representatives from European parliaments as well as the Parliament of Canada also said in a statement on Sunday that Georgia's parliamentary election were neither free nor fair, citing instances of candidate intimidation, state power abuse, and vote buying. The statement read, "The political climate in the run up to the elections did not correspond to European standards of justice." It added that the European Union could not recognize the results of these elections and called for personal sanctions to be imposed on those responsible for the abuses. European Council President Charles Michel also called for a swift and transparent investigation of alleged irregularities, saying that he would put the topic on the agenda of the EU summit in Budapest on November 8th. He wrote on X, "The alleged irregularities during the Georgia elections must be seriously clarified and addressed. Western nations worry that if the pro-Russian Georgian dream remains in power, Georgia may again fail to reassert its sovereignty and remain victim to Russia's ambitions to revive its empire," because as we know, Russia's empire building project has several different steps. It has several different pieces going on at the same time. One of it, it's war in Ukraine, and the other is affecting elections and destabilizing countries. Like, for example, the arsons in Poland. This is like multifaceted step, multifaceted plan going on. And of course, we have Georgian pro-EU opposition disputes falsified election results. This one's from. So yeah, that's basically it. We have this very, very dire situation within Georgia. It has already started during the whole fiasco with the foreign agent bill, which led to giant protests on the street, which led to a giant crackdown on the protesters on the street. There was certain hope that, due to the pressure from the population, this Georgian dream bill of foreign agent bill, that it would not pass, but it did. Then the people's big hope was the election, the parliamentary election, but it seems like there was foul play, that democracy has been severely undermined, and now we are where we are. Not sure what will happen next. Some claim that having any faith in the international community is a fool's errand, and that the Georgian people should take matters into their own hands and rise up and stand against this falsified result. But that is sometimes easier said than done.